All right. Good morning, everybody. Man, before I even go on, there is just not enough I could say about my pastor. Got me backstage, about to tear up. I'm like, you're a man, don't cry. You're a man. Man, I love Pastor Peter and Tiffany so much. They are the real deal. They're the same people off the stage that they are on the stage. And Peter, thank you so much for entrusting me to speak to everybody here this morning. Well, hey, if you're new here, thank you so much for spending your weekend with with us. We're so glad that you're here. We really are. If you haven't stopped by on your way out in the lobby, we've got a gift that we want to give you just for being here for the very first time. So we are in week 3 of a series that is titled Fed Up. Now, if you missed last week was incredible. You're going to want to go find the podcast. Pastor Peter talked all about the relational fouls that we commit. And I don't know about you, but I commit a ton of fouls as well. It may actually have to do with Madden on my phone as well, Kevin. That was kind of crazy. But you want to go catch that because that was really, really good. Man, Thanksgiving this past Thursday. Anybody here still digesting that food? Man, Thanksgiving was so incredible. I've got a picture from this past Thanksgiving. This is my beautiful, beautiful wife. I am so lucky. I'm married way over my head, and it's not because I'm 5'6". Seriously. Her name's Amanda. I love her so much. She's back there leading the teenagers right now. And that's my little girl. Her name's Rowan. We call her Ro, and she knows her name. She'll go Ro. It's super cute. And she's rambunctious. I love her so much. Thanksgiving. Man, I don't know about you, but Thanksgiving was a really big deal in my house. Thanksgiving was that time of year where my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, my cousins I didn't even know I had would all come over, and we would have a feast. I mean, we have everything you could possibly think of, but a staple in my family was green bean casserole. I'm telling you, that's still my favorite to today. We'd have green bean casserole, homemade mashed potatoes, homemade mac and cheese. We'd have pies on pies on pies. I'm talking pumpkin pie, Dutch apple pie, and then my all-time favorite, and I got no love during preview service, so if you don't like this, you're weird. Chocolate cream pie. Man, there's something about just the chocolate pudding and the whipped cream. It's just so, somebody clapped. That's what I'm talking about. I couldn't have any of it this past Thanksgiving, but I'll never forget one Thanksgiving. Now, if your family's like my family, we got rowdy, and we get rowdy, and it wouldn't be to any surprise if at some point during the day, we just so happen to get fed up with one another. See what I did there? And so this one particular Thanksgiving, me and my younger cousin, he's a few years younger than me, we were downstairs in the basement, and we had taken all the extra blankets we could find. We took all of the cushions off of the couch, and we created this wrestling ring, and we had this thing that we called Thanksgiving Slam. Now, I don't know about you, but I grew up on WWF. I'm talking about The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker, the glory days of wrestling. Clearly, I have an issue. I loved wrestling. Anyways, so we make our grand entrance, and there's really only one way to make your grand entrance, so I'm sorry that I have to paint this picture for you, but it's in your boxers with no shirt on, and so we make our grand entrance because that's as close as we could get to the real thing, you know what I mean? So we make our grand entrance, and then we start going at it fake punches, back and forth like a Rocky movie. I'm blocking punches with my face, and it's getting super crazy, and then I pick them up, and I slam them on the ground, and then I hop on them, and I go to pin them, and 1, 2, and then he kicks out, gets his shoulder up, and then we both get up, and then he runs over to this chair, and he gets on the chair, and he jumps off, and he clotheslines, and I fall, and he jumps on me, and he goes to pin me, 1, 2, and I kick out. I'm just last second. He gets his shoulder up, and then we act like we've been wrestling for 30 minutes, and so we both struggle to get to our feet, and we're grappling each other, and then I grab him, and I put him in this headlock, right, and I'm squeezing, and all of a sudden he starts punching me in my ribs. And I'm like, Derek, what are you doing? We're faking. He's I can't. Boom. I can't breathe. I'm squeezing. I'm I'm going to kill you. I can't breathe. And I'm whoa. Maybe he's being real. Maybe he's not playing possum. Maybe he can't breathe. So I let go of the headlock. And at this point, Derek, He's fed up. So he goes over and he grabs the chair that he jumped off of, and he takes it and he comes towards me full speed. And the last thing I see is this. Boom! Whacks me on the head with it. I fall out. I'm seeing stars and I'm dizzy. I'm talking, he concussed me for sure. Anybody here ever take a chair to the head? What about this Thanksgiving? No, only me. Okay. Whether it be the messiness of family, an intolerable work environment, a dysfunctional relationship, we all have moments where we get fed up with people. I mean, maybe this past week, it was Thursday, it was Thanksgiving, and so maybe this past week, you found yourself in a verbal war going back and forth with a family member about something that happened last Thanksgiving. Or maybe you have a coworker that you absolutely cannot stand. I mean, you're like, you shudder at the very mention of their name. You're like, don't you say that name in this house. Or maybe there's a boss that you have, and you're like, man, they're just so incompetent. How did you get to be the boss? I could be a way better boss than you. My boss is amazing. Love my boss. He's just so, no, really, he is. He's awesome. Or maybe you're in a relationship right now, and like you're ready to call it quits, right? You're like, man, I'm about to take a chair to this person's head. Seriously. But point blank, you're just fed up. I think that this is actually a tension that a lot of us live in. And the reason is there's always going to be somebody we're fed up with, and there's always going to be somebody that's fed up with us. So how do we navigate this? What are we supposed to do when we're fed up? Paul writes a letter to the church of Rome to help them navigate this. You see, the good news is that it's not just us that's fed up. People have been fed up with other people for like thousands of years. And so Paul writes this letter to the church of Rome, and he's like, hey, I'm going to teach you how to navigate this. It's found in Romans chapter 12. There's a Bible in your seats on page 775 if you want to follow along. But we're going to just go ahead and dive right in. This is Paul speaking. He says this. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Everyone? Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to avenge. I will repay, says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. You see, I think Paul writes this because he understood that it is human nature to, when somebody does something wrong to you, to want to return the favor. If somebody hits you, hit them right back. But Paul knew something about repaying evil for evil. And if you're taking notes, I want you to write this down. Paul understood that payback never pays off. I want to say that again. Payback never pays off. So my parents, if your parents probably taught you this as well, my parents taught me to never lay my hands on anybody. And definitely never, under any circumstance, am I to lay a chair upon somebody's head. I'm still a little tore up from that. I wasn't allowed to throw a punch, unless, of course, it was the second one. If they hit you, Justin, you better defend yourself, boy. You be a man. You hit them back, right? Well, when I was in the 6th grade, I broke this rule. See, there was an 8th grader, big bully 8th grader. He lived in this neighborhood next to mine. We rode the same bus together. We would hang out together. We would play video games together. I thought we were pretty good friends until one day he began to make fun of me on the bus. Begin to throw some verbal punches. And at first, I just ignored it. I'm like, I'm just going to put my head down. I'm just going to ignore it. He doesn't really mean it. He's just trying to show off in front of his buddies. But several weeks went by, and this guy was still at it. And one particular bus ride home, this guy was in unicorn form. I'm talking about he was in rare form. And he was just ruthless with his verbal assault, one thing after the next. All of a sudden, my stomach dropped. Hands begin to shake. And my internal temperature raised 2 degrees because you could totally feel that. I get hot sweats. And he was in the front. I was in the back. We were like 3 stops away from his bus stop, and my bus stop was right after his. And so we're pulling up on his bus stop, and he says something. He goes, "That's why your family's white trash." And I was like, "What?" I got up, ran to the front of the bus, cocked my fist back, and planted one right on his nose. Boom! Blood started going everywhere. I don't know what I thought. Like, maybe I thought I was going to plant one and then get off on his bus stop and then walk home. Like, so the bus driver's like, "No," grabs me by the collar. I got suspended. I lost my friendship. I got suspended. I got grounded. It was terrible. Let me tell you, I got payback. But, man, it did not pay off. It did not pay off. Maybe you've never punched somebody in the face. But I'd be willing to bet that you've thought about it. Whoo, I'll punch you in your nose right now. Ooh, you're getting on my nerves. The truth is, when we're fed up, it's super tempting to try to get payback. Why? Because it feels good. I think one of the ways we try to get payback is with our actions. It's the things we do, right? Some of us here, we try to get payback this way. You get it through passive-aggressive behavior, right? So, like, maybe when you're absolutely fed up with somebody, you just give them the good old silent treatment. You're like, "No, they're going to get this silent treatment. I'm not saying a word to them. Nope. I ain't saying nothing to her." But then there's, like, those classic subtle insults, right? Like, they're disguised as compliments, but if you ever, like, stop and think about it, you're like, "Hey, you just insulted me. Ow, that hurt." You try to get payback through passive-aggressive. And then there's some of us, and unfortunately I fall into this category. You'd be like, "No, I'm not exactly passive. I'm just kind of aggressive." Like, and so what you do is you huff, you puff, and you try to blow down the people you're fed up with like the big bad wolf. You're like, "Oh, I'm going to blow you down." Poke out your chest, try to assert your dominance. We try to get payback through our actions. Another way that we try to get payback is through our words. Now, our words can carry so much weight. You know, when we're fed up with somebody or a situation, we can use our words for peace, or we can use our words for payback. If you're anything like me, chances are you've probably used your words for payback more times than you'd like to admit. And let me tell you, I'm not proud of it. Not proud of it. But man, there's just something about telling off that family member or that coworker or that boss that just feels really good in the moment. See, the problem is that moment never lasts, and then remorse kicks in. And I think Paul knew this, which is why he commands us in verse 17. He says, "Do not repay anyone evil for evil." Because he understood this: the payback you crave in the present is not worth the peace you lose in the future. Let me say it again. The payback that you crave in the present is never worth the peace that you're going to lose in the future. The Apostle Paul tells us this. He says, "Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone." You see, when you're fed up with somebody, you have the right to disagree, but you don't have the right to dishonor. And when you use the kind of words that dishonor people, you run the risk of fracturing your relationships. And if we're being real here, it's the people that we were spending time with on Thanksgiving that seem to get the worst of our words. We just let them fly. We don't think about what's coming out. But man, words, once they fly, they're like toothpaste, man. Once you squeeze it out of the tube, you're not getting them back. You're not getting it back in. Right? You got to be careful with your words. Let me tell you this. Don't lose future peace over present payback. Because when you break the trust of a loved one, it's hard to get it back, because trust takes years to build, seconds to break, and forever to repair. Payback never pays off. The second principle that Paul is trying to teach us in this passage is this: peace is not always possible. Now, I don't know about you, but there are just some people that I've come across in my life that I just don't jive with. I don't know if it's that we have different personalities, or we have different principles, or we just have different political beliefs. I don't know what it is, but there's something that's there that just causes us to butt heads. Maybe you have those people in your life too, and maybe you're sitting next to them. So if you're sitting next to them, don't look at them. That would be passive-aggressive. Don't try to get the payback. Don't do it. But really, Did you know that Paul had these people too? Paul had people that he did not mesh with. See, all throughout Paul's ministry, he went all throughout the Mediterranean planting churches. And as he was planting churches, there were people that came alongside him. Now, as they were planting more and more churches, they came to realize that they had pretty significant differences. And actually, it got so tense, and it got to the point where Paul was like, hey, look, you're going to go that way. I'm going to go this way. We can just agree to disagree. And so they eventually split up. They went their own ways. And I think that's why Paul says this in verse 18. He says, if possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. He knew that there's always going to be somebody that you're fed up with, and that there's always going to be somebody that's fed up with you. However, that is not a pass to pass over peace. Look what else he says. As far as it depends on you. Now, I don't know about you, but that raises the stakes for me. That takes it so much higher, because I take this as a challenge. Paul's saying, go as far as you possibly can for peace. And not only does it apply to the people that you're fed up with, but it also applies to the people that are fed up with you. When it comes to peace, Paul is saying we don't have the luxury to pick and choose who we have it with. That's why he says this. Live at peace with who? Everyone. This includes your dysfunctional family member, the annoying boss, or whoever else you could think of this morning. We're called to live at peace with everyone, which means that we have to do everything in our power for the sake of peace. So how do we do that? How do we get peace? Well, I think what Paul teaches us is that peace isn't found. It's made. You don't find peace. You make peace. You see, when dealing with people you're fed up, you're never going to find peace until you make the conscious decision to make peace. Peace is a product of intention. It's not happenstance. You see, in the midst of conflict, I hate you. You always do that. Oh, look, there's some peace. Nobody's ever stumbled into peace. It doesn't happen that way. However, I did discover while I was doing research for this message that in the midst of conflict, somebody did stumble upon something else. Check out this video. All right, so check it out. These dudes, I don't know what they're fighting about. Maybe this guy parked where he wasn't supposed to park, and so now they're just rolling around the ground like a bunch of toddlers. And this guy's like, hey, hold on, wait a minute, break it up here. Here's some pizza. You guys want some pizza? Oh, pizza. Is it pepperoni? Oh, yeah, I love pizza. Is it cauliflower crust? Yes. All right, yeah, I'll take some pizza. Yeah, you know, what were we even fighting about? I don't know, man, but there's some pizza. Let's eat this. Oh, man, water too? What? Yeah, what? Thanks, man. You're such a great dude. What were we fighting about? Oh, man, you just cut me off. I wanted that spot. So I just pulled over and you started going at it. Well, cool, man. Have a great day. Thank you so much. This is the real video. I know it's real because I found it on Facebook, okay? If it's on Facebook, it's got to be real, right? Now, I don't know about you, but I'll make some peace over pizza any day, right? Like, as long as it's cauliflower crust, because I'm on, like, the keto diet, you know what I'm saying? But maybe this week, you need to make peace over a piece of pizza. Maybe you need to call somebody that you've been fed up with and say, hey, I'd love to treat you to lunch. Maybe you got to go out and do that this week. Maybe you've got to make peace. Maybe you've got to stop expecting that person to come to you and go, you know what, I'm so sorry for all the things I did to you. It's not going to work that way. Somebody in that relationship where there's tension and conflict has to come to this place where they go, you know what, I'm just going to make the peace. I'm going to go out of my way. I'm going to make the peace. And let me tell you, the only thing that'll get in the way between you and peace is yourself. It's yourself. You see, in leadership, it's taught that the most important person you'll ever lead, and by far the most difficult person you'll ever lead, is yourself. And I think the same thing is true when it comes to making peace, because too often we get caught up in what that person did to us. We're like, oh, but they did this to me. Let me tell you, focusing in on the offense, getting tunnel vision on the offense, that's only going to lead to you being even more fed up. You see, I think making peace has to start with ourselves. We have to take a really deep, awkward, honest look on what's happening inside of us that's causing us to react the way that we're reacting when we're fed up. And I think once we come to grips with that, once we've taken that self-survey, we have to take what we found, and we really ought to just give it to God. Say, God, I've got this thing, I discovered this thing, and I really just need you to take it. And this is huge. Please don't miss this, because this is why Paul says this. He says, friends, do not avenge yourselves. Instead, leave room for what? God's wrath. Because it is written, vengeance belongs to me. Who's me? It's God. It's not you, it's not me, it's God. I will repay, says the Lord. Guys, leave the payback for God. And you make the peace. You see, God will judge. All you have to do is love. God will do the judging if you do the loving. It's kind of cheesy. Verse 20, look what he says. See, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. For in doing so, you will be heaping fiery coals on his head. Now, I've got to explain this a little bit, because Paul is not saying love people out of spite. Don't misunderstand. That's not love. Paul's not saying, oh man, do those dishes. That'll show them. Yeah. Do the lawn. That'll show them. Do this, that. No, you can't. That's not the position that Paul's challenging us to take. Actually, I think there's a principle at play in this. It's this. It's that emotion, the things that we feel, will follow motion. So if we do it, just do it, the emotion's going to follow. I mean, the same thing worked with my diet. I was like, I fail on diets. I was 290, now I'm 248, right? And I failed, but I made this decision. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. Now, all of a sudden, I start feeling like it. I'm like, oh, you know what? Because I've been doing it, now I feel like it. Let me take it in this way. So you may not feel like making peace right now because of the awkwardness and the tension and all the different things that's going on in the relationship. But if you get to this point where you're like, you know what, I don't have to feel like making peace, I'm just going to make peace, God's going to honor that. And something's going to happen inside of you, and I think that the emotions are going to follow you. And Paul caps it off by saying this. He says, do not be conquered by evil, but conquer evil with good. You see, to conquer evil with good, you have to intentionally, on purpose, look to make peace. Essentially, you have to be a peacemaker. Everybody say peacemaker. You guys can do better than that. Everybody say peacemaker. So what would it look like for you and me to be peacemakers? To go into every situation with the agenda that we're going to make peace at all costs so long as it depends on us. What would that look like? But to get a better grip on what it looks like to be peacemaker, I want to take a look at what I believe is the peacemaker's playbook. You see, the first thing peacemakers do is they tell the truth in love. Peacemakers don't yell the truth. They tell the truth. You see, truth plus volume never ends well. You got to take that volume down. If you're going to tell somebody the truth, you got to do it in love. And also, you've got to tell the truth when it's not stressful. Like sometimes, like the best time to talk about how your needs aren't met isn't like when your wife just like first walks through the door after a long day, right? Like that's not the best time to be like, I know you had a long day, but man, I'm really just not feeling loved by you right now. Like that's a high stress point. That is not the best time to do that. Don't do that. Now, I don't know about you, but I respond better when I'm not stressed. When I'm stressed, it's like the littlest things bother me. Justin, what? I just said your name. Relax. No, you said there's something in that. We've got to pick and choose when we tell the truth, and we've got to do it in love. There's a right time, and there's a wrong time. But it's also super important that when you decide to tell the truth in love, you really, really, really need to attack the issue, not the person. It's so easy to attack the person. Now, I'm going to confess something to you guys. I have a terrible tendency, and I've probably done this to many of you already, to just cut people off like mid-sentence. Like we'll be talking, have a conversation, I'll just like, and just cut you off. So if I'm like trying to sugarcoat it, I'm gonna be like, well, it's just because I just get really excited and I don't want to lose the thought that I had and so. But if I'm being real, it's because in that moment I am being totally self-absorbed, and I'm like, my thought, the thing I want to say, is so much more important than what you're saying. That's really what I'm communicating. And so one day, We were leaving a gathering of friends. And Amanda looked over at me. She turned the radio down, and I'm like, oh, snap. And she said, babe, I know you don't realize you're doing this. Because if you did, I don't think you would do it. But you got this really bad tendency to cut people off when they're talking. And tonight you did it to me several times. And I want you to know that it hurt my feelings. And I was like, oh, man. That's real. You see, Amanda didn't work around the issue. She worked right through the issue because that's what peacemakers do. They work through the issue. And because she told me the truth in love and attacked the issue and not me, I've become more aware of my tendency to cut people off. So if I've cut you off mid-conversation, I'm sorry, all right? I'm sorry. I'm working on it. It's a work in progress. But that's one thing that peacemakers do. Another thing that peacemakers do, write this down, is they apologize when they are wrong. Look, we all have our list of names of people we're fed up with, but somewhere out there, our name is on somebody else's list. And we have to be willing to own that other people aren't always the problem. Sometimes we're the problem. No, not me. Never me. Look, I won't lie to you. I'm not the easiest person to love, and neither are you. We're just not. And we have to admit when we're wrong. How do we do that? We have to admit to specific actions. Let me tell you, you don't say, I'm sorry that you're so sensitive and your feelings were hurt. That's called a backhanded apology. The proper response is, man, I'm so sorry I raised my voice to you. I shouldn't have done that. Because you're acknowledging that you made the mistake and that you shouldn't have done that. You're taking that ownership. You see, you got to acknowledge the issue and you've got to own it. I also have to address this because it's facts. Sometimes when we've wronged somebody, sorry doesn't cut it. And we've got to take a more humble approach, and it's, will you forgive me? Yeah, that's hard. But man, I'm telling you, if there's somebody you've got tension with right now and you just come up and you go, you know what? I was wrong. Will you forgive me? You will be amazed by the way they respond. The next thing that peacemakers do, and it's by far probably one of the hardest things to do, is they forgive and let go. Now, I'm going to say it again. I said that peacemakers forgive and let go. What I didn't say is that peacemakers forgive and forget. You see, for many of you here this morning, there is trauma and a lot of pain attached to this right here. Some of you have been hurt in ways that are unthinkable. And you don't ever forget that. And I wouldn't dare stand up here and ask you to. Like maybe there was somebody you trusted and they lied to you and they deceived you, and there was somebody that was supposed to protect you, but instead they took advantage of you and they abused you. And you're thinking, how do I forgive that? With God and with time. I'm going to be really excruciatingly vulnerable with you guys this morning, if that's okay. See, when I was a little boy, I was sexually molested by a family member. It was somebody that I trusted. And the trauma of that experience has stuck with me for so many years. And I have never forgotten it. But what I have been able to do with the help of God is I've been able to forgive and let go. Because I took it and I put it in God's hands. And that's what Paul tells us to do in Romans 12:19. He's saying, let God handle it. Just let it go. You see, sometimes the best thing we can do is take a step back and remind ourselves of all the things we've been forgiven of. Remind ourselves of the infinite, unlimited forgiveness that God offers us through his son, Jesus. And you know what? Some of you here this morning, you might have this erroneous, false belief that God is fed up with you. And I want you to know that that could not be any farther from the truth. Because God is not mad at you. I tell students this all the time. God is madly in love with you. God's not fed up with you. He doesn't hold on to your mistakes. And when you take your faith and you place it in Jesus, he forgives and he lets go. You see, God's forgiveness should motivate us to forgive others. Too often, when somebody hurts us, we hold on. We get this tight grip. I don't know about you, man, but unforgiveness is tiring. And holding on to that unforgiveness, man, sometimes you just can't do it anymore. You've got to let go. Forgiveness is ultimately a gift you give yourself. Because holding on to bitterness in your heart is like drinking poison, hoping that that person dies and letting go will let you go from the hurt that has held you back from making peace. You know, as I wrote this message, I realized that there was bitterness and resentment that I was holding on to. And so this past week, I emailed my boss from the very first church I ever worked at because I had to make peace. Over the last 2 years, I've allowed unforgiveness to eat me alive. See, I resigned from my position. I accepted another position when I was there. But the last words he said to me have echoed in my head for 2 years. He said this. He looked at me. He said, Justin, you blew it. Put his hand on his head and said, oh my goodness, you blew it, you blew it, you blew it. And at the time, I was so angry. I was like, no, you blew it. You don't know anything about youth ministry. I was so upset. But now when I look back in hindsight, you know what? There are some things that I blew. There are some situations that I really could have navigated better. But I was bitter and I held on to resentment. I let it cloud my judgment. Maybe you're here and you need to make peace with your relationship with God. It's as simple as saying this: God, I'm fed up. I'm fed up with my mistakes. I'm fed up with holding on to unforgiveness. And I need the peace that only you can give. I place my faith in your son, Jesus. I believe he died for me. I'm fed up with being the Lord of my own life, and you take control. Man, if that's you this morning, I would love to talk with you and pray with you, because I know Peter would love to do the same thing, both of us. But for everybody else, for everybody in here, I want to leave you with a challenge this morning. As you go into this week, I challenge you to make peace with one situation, with one place, with one person. Stop waiting, sitting around, waiting for them to come and apologize to you. You're not going to find peace. You need to go make peace. Make the peace. Let me pray for you this morning.